Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So as you can see, I am doing much better. If you missed the posts last week, Wednesday we had tree service come and take down the trees, which I'll show you in just a little bit. And you know, they got here that morning, they started working, I felt fine, it was like a normal day. And then about 10:30, 11 o'clock or so, I suddenly got extremely sick. And it came out of nowhere. I mean, I went from fine to really not fine in just minutes, it seemed like. I was running a fever, I was nauseous, it was, you know, the body aches, everything. Think flu. That's what was going on. It was awful. And I got so sick so fast, I'm like, I won't be doing any videos the rest of the week. But amazingly, the next day, about mid-afternoon, I was completely fine again. It was as though I had never gotten sick. But of course, by that point, I didn't have anything filmed for Friday, and so, or my Shabbat video. And so I just said, okay, we'll just pick up again on Monday and we'll be good. Thank you for all the prayers. I got so many kind of messages, and I'm grateful for all of those. Right now I'm getting started doing a recipe. So many of you know I stopped eating pork a few years ago, and there's a lot of pork recipes on my website. I'm not going to take them down because so many people use those recipes. Frankly, I'm kind of going back and I'm redoing a lot of my recipes, and I'm converting them into biblically clean recipes. Now, I'm not going to go into the difference between biblically clean and kosher at this moment. It's not quite exactly the same thing, but biblically clean. And so what I have right here might look like a pork roast, but it's actually turkey breast. And I have a recipe on my website that I've made so many times. It's so simple. It's really good for company because it seems kind of fancy, but it's so easy to make, and you're going to see that here in a minute. But it is for a cranberry orange roast, and I am doing cranberry orange turkey roast. And I'm going to make this almost exactly the way I used to do it as pork, with a couple minor modifications. So first of all, I have my oven preheating to 350 degrees. And I'm going to take some paper towels and just kind of pat my turkey roast here. This is just turkey breast that is inside one of those little meat net thingies to shape it properly into a roast. So I'm going to pat it dry, I'm going to oil it, I'm going to salt and pepper it, and that is all we do right now, and it'll be popped into the oven. So we're just going to pat this dry. And I do need to get my camera because I am going to rephotograph this. We're going to take a little bit of oil. I'm going to use some extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to drizzle it over the top. Alright, we're just going to kind of brush the oil all over the top, all over the roast, top and sides. Wash the hands again. And now for some salt and pepper. Just going to sprinkle this all over the top. Maybe a half a teaspoon or so. Oh, and look, I got a new dish for my salt. Most of you have seen I have used a ironstone, I think that's what it's called, sugar bowl for years for my salt, but I got this adorable stoneware or pottery honey pot from Old Dog Pottery, which is the pottery that I went to recently here in Arkansas, and I decided to get one of these for my salt because it's cute. Alright, so now this is going to go into the oven at 350 degrees, and depending upon how big your turkey breast roast is, it could take anywhere between 1 to 2 hours. And so we're going to go ahead and let this bake for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to pour in a cup of chicken broth around the sides, And we will also be making a glaze for this that we will begin brushing on after we have put the broth in there. So while that's getting started, I thought I would share a couple of things that have been going on. So like I mentioned, I decided to just go ahead and take a break on Friday, not do a video. And what I did instead is I started getting caught up on some of my sewing. I have had so many sewing projects that have been waiting to be done. And so that is what I did. The first thing that I worked on was a baby quilt. When my mother-in-law passed away and we cleaned out the house to prepare to put it on the market, we found all sorts of what many people would call whips, works in progress. And as someone who's handy, crafty, things like that, you know, most of us know that term. You start something and you get partway through it, and then you start something else and you're like, I'll get to that later, and then you don't get to that later. And so you have this work in progress that you never finished. Well, kind of like the sewing projects I just mentioned. So we had found many works in progress at my mother-in-law's, and one of those was a handful of unfinished baby blankets, quilts, things like that. I collected all of these partially done baby blankets and I brought them home with me. There's just a few of them. And I said, you know what? There's grandbabies who are all grown up who will be having great grandbabies here at some point. And so I made the decision that anytime a great grandbaby was born, I would go ahead and finish one of those blankets and send it off to the family members who had the babies. And so we, of course, had another grandbaby, little Miss Emma, who was here during Thanksgiving. And I had not yet finished one of those baby blankets for her. And so I pulled it out. And, you know, the top of it wasn't perfectly square or rectangle, but I didn't really want to cut anything off of it. And so I just found a fabric that would kind of go with it. I just laid the fabrics together, cut the backing fabric to the size of the quilt top, and sewed it all together. And this isn't like a quilted baby blanket where you go through and like hand stitch all through it or anything like that. It's just very simple and doesn't have any batting because, you know, you don't always want a really heavy blanket. It's just a lightweight blanket, lightweight quilt that I think they will enjoy. I also decided to throw together one of my half aprons, which I don't have on at the moment. It's hanging over there on the wall. I had been talking about making some half aprons. I mentioned it quite a while ago, and I just finally got around to making one. I will do a tutorial on how to make one. You don't have to have a pattern. It's a lot like these farmhouse aprons. You just measure out some shapes, sew it together, and you've got an apron. So you don't have to get a pattern or anything like that. And it's very customizable to exactly how big you want it to be. And so I just kind of threw one together, and like I said, I'll do another one in the future and I'll take you through the process. But I made this one out of like a chocolate colored linen. I did decide at the last minute to throw some pockets on there because it looked really cute, but y'all know we need pockets, and so I added some just kind of rounded pockets. So while that is baking, I'm gonna make my glaze. Now, I love homemade cranberry sauce. I would never have anything else besides that on my Thanksgiving table, but I'm not going to tell you that I don't buy occasionally a can of the pre-made cranberry sauce, because this comes in really handy, and after the holiday season you can buy this on like sale. I snatched this up, I'm not gonna lie. I've usually got a can or two of this in my pantry at all times. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole can and I'm going to pop it into my saucepan here. Now I have made this recipe with leftover homemade cranberry sauce too. But, you know, using the canned stuff allows you to make this anytime. So we're just going to pour this in. We're going to add in a cup of orange juice. And we're going to add in a half a cup of brown sugar. Or you could use maple syrup. So I'm just going to turn the stove on. And we're just going to let this start melting down and just kind of all come together, just all dissolve together. The other thing that I sewed on Friday was a pillow, a pillowcase. I made a pillow for Willa. I had this really cute farm flannel that I had picked up, and I sewed a pillowcase for a throw pillow, and it's so easy to make. I mean, you basically just measure the size of the pillow, you wrap the fabric around it with some overlap, hem the edges, sew the sides, and you've got a pillowcase that is basically self-closing. And so now Willow can play with her pillow, she can sleep on it, she can do whatever, and of course it's washable because it comes off. It's a pillowcase. But it stays closed a little better because it's the overlapping type of pillowcase. Right now I just wanted to share with you about our trees. I am so excited to have those trees down. The service that we used was a company here locally. I mentioned how I had reached out to somebody and they never got back with me. It was very disappointing, and initially I was thinking it had been 2 months, but really I've been waiting for 3 months or somewhere around that time frame, because I had initially reached out to them and sent them all the photos and waited and waited and waited. And that's when I reached out to them again, and they said they would get, you know, anyways, I already talked about it. That said, I reached out to another company in this area, and they said absolutely. They came out that day. They sent us the quote. The quote was great, and they came out Wednesday and they took down all of the trees. But I'm already thinking about some more trees that I might want them to take down for us in the future, and we will call them again because they did a great job. And so now I'm just thinking about the garden and looking forward to getting started on that here very soon. Lord willing, of course. Always got to have that caveat in there. All right, so my sauce is nice and melted. And so I'm going to take about half of it and I'm going to pour it into another pan because we want to save some for a dipping sauce, but we don't want to contaminate it with raw turkey juice. Let's wipe that real quick before we step back on the eye, just to make sure we don't burn anything on there. Then we have a little Miss Willow who has appeared here a little bit ago. All right, so we're just going to set the extra aside for the time being. We don't need it right now. Put it back. Thank you. Okay. Pull out my turkey roast here. I'm going to add in my cup of chicken broth, and I'm just pouring it into the bottom. And I'm going to begin brushing the glaze on top of this roast. And I'm going to brush this on basically every 15 minutes now until the turkey roast is finished baking. And at this time, I'm also going to go ahead and insert my meat thermometer probe so that we, yes, I see. What do you find? So that we can make sure that this is coming up to temperature. We're going to bake this until the roast reads 160 degrees. So this oven actually has one of these meat probe thermometer things built into it. We just haven't looked up how to use it yet. So I'm just using my trusty old one that I've had for years and years, my ThermoPro, and we'll just use this as usual. So I'm setting my thermometer to 160 degrees, and when it reaches that temperature, it'll sound an alarm to let me know that it is ready. And like I said, while that is baking, about every 15 minutes or so, maybe every 10 minutes, just somewhere in there, you want to go ahead and brush on more of that glaze, just so that it can start kind of building up on top of the roast. What is it? What is it? Throw the lid on, and now I'm just going to let this sit for 10 to 15 minutes, let it rest. And while it's resting, I'll go ahead and get the rest of the things for dinner prepared. And while the finished temperature for turkey is 165 degrees for breast meat, when you pull it out and you let it rest, the heat actually continues to cause the internal portion. So it's still going to continue going up in temperature in the middle. And so even though I cut it off at 160, it's still going to go up to 165 while it is sitting there. Alright, so we pulled the netting off of the turkey, and now we're going to go ahead and slice this up. And the only way I ever slice up something like this is with my electric carving knife. I actually have two of these. This is an old Black & Decker one I've had forever. We thought we had lost the blades when we moved, and so I ordered a new one, and of course then I find the blades. And so now I've got two. But this is just the perfect way to slice up any roast. So now I'm going to serve this with some rolls and some green beans, and we're going to drizzle some more of that glaze that we had reserved all over the top. Alright guys, so dinner is done. I'm going to enjoy a delicious turkey roast dinner, and then I'm going to do a little more sewing. And I'll share about what I'm sewing this evening in probably the next video. So I'm going to go enjoy my dinner. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to y'all next time.